Episode 2 of the Swedish HBO original Beartown is out. This episode ups the ante when it comes to the tension, but is it enough to keep the show interesting? This is a spoiler-free review of episode 2, but it's going to contain some spoilers for episode 1. If you're looking for my spoiler-free review of episode 1, I've linked it down below in the description. So former NHL hockey player Peter moves his family back to Beartown, his hometown, to coach the town's hockey team. Peter has a lot of tension with a few of the townspeople, especially with former teammate Mats. They are not friends, and it's pretty contentious. Peter has a wife, son, and daughter who have relocated back to the town with him. Peter's wife, Mira, is a lawyer. The son, Leo, doesn't really have much screen time through this series, but when he's on screen, you can be sure that he's going to be spouting a ton of profanity. Maya is Peter's daughter, and she's about the same age as the boys on the hockey team that Peter coaches. In episode 1, we learn a lot about just the townspeople, but we also learn about Mats and how he treats his son, Kevin. He's pretty relentless and driving when it comes to hockey. Mats wants Kevin to succeed where he himself had failed. And this leads to a pretty terrible scene where Mats kicks Kevin out of the car in the middle of the road, forcing Kevin to walk home in weather that's something like 35 degrees below zero. From there, we get to see the beaten down mindset that Kevin has and how he basically just shuts down and goes into a rote behavior of just shooting pucks, which in this instance is on the side of the road, in the dark, in the freezing cold. The beginning of episode 1 began with a blurred scene of someone with a gun chasing another person. They stop on a frozen lake, and then it goes to black and a gunshot rings out. At the end of that episode, we see that the one with the gun is Maya, and she's chasing Kevin. But what in the world led to this exchange? In this current episode, we see the mounting pressure on Peter to produce a winning team. The strain this puts on Peter and the players, it just becomes crazy. We see this come through in all of that parental involvement. They're like stage parents. I mean, some really feel like they have a say in how the team should play. And while Peter's working with the team, Mira is approached about a new job opportunity. And from the discussion, this seems like it could be something great, but because it's shrouded in just an obscurity, it's hard to know how this could ultimately affect her career and their life together. We see that Peter is still dealing with his grief over the loss of their son, and we get to see how he just stuffs that. And I mean, maybe he's using it as a helpful motivation in his coaching. It just creates this big drive to succeed. And so if he can win, then maybe that euphoria and joy is going to replace his sadness. As Maya is trying to make connections with peers, she sort of befriended Kevin, at least in a semi-competitive and flirty way. And I wouldn't say that it's a real romantic flirting, but more so just trying to feel out a friendship. She's also negotiating high school and trying to fit in and garner relationships there. Probably her standing on gaining friends can rest on how well her dad does or doesn't do on the ice, because the view of the townspeople that they have on Peter, it trickles down to the rest of the family. Like in the first episode, hockey practice and games still remain a big portion to the narrative. And there's one game in particular in this episode which is pretty exciting, and we get to feel the tension. We get to see some of the many pressures coming at Peter, and gotta love those sports parents. One of the coolest portions of this episode is the discovery of a talented new player. And as he joins the team, I thought it was a bit difficult to watch some of the practice because it's certainly a rough sport, but by the end, I'm cheering him on. We also get to see how some of the parents treat this new player's family. And that mindset is just disturbing and disgusting, but it also is very telling at how a lot of the townspeople view others. This episode also works to really highlight the culture of hockey within the town. It holds so much importance, and not just from a financial aspect, but also as an identity. I mean, the young men are held up in ways that aren't necessarily fair to them, or in ways they're even able to maintain. And the hockey game is a great example of this. We see how high of a regard the sport and team in particular are viewed. And it's important that the show conveys the culture to us. As an audience, we really need to understand the mindset that surrounds the sport within the town. Because as the story progresses, this culture and the mindset, it really begins to play key roles. There's some really important moments between Peter and the team too. We get to see a coach who is proud of his team's accomplishments, but also I think it sets up deeper relationships between them. And in those boys who don't have great relationships with their dads, Peter kind of becomes this surrogate to them, even if he doesn't mean to. This also helps to increase the tension between Peter and others, especially Mats. So the first episode really set up the characters for us, but was lacking some tension or urgency or even mystery, especially given the opening and then the closing scenes. On this episode, the tension and urgency are certainly there. There are heartbreaking moments that are also disgusting. There is this scene that is several minutes in length, and it is really difficult to watch. I don't think it's going to catch you totally off guard though, because we sort of see some of these actions beginning to build as the scenes progress. It doesn't take away though from the scene itself or make it easier to watch. From a filming standpoint, this is shot really well, especially when it comes to the hockey game. I mean, I feel like I was right in the middle of the game at the right moments, and then was able to see some of the action as a spectator. The camera just captures a lot of that excitement, and it makes those scenes really engaging, even if you don't know or like hockey. One thing that did bother me with this episode, but it ultimately doesn't really matter a whole lot, it's the issue of the job offer that Mira gets. We don't know what it's for and what it could mean for her family. We get the sense that it's probably a promotion, but she shows some hesitation, and that portion is unaddressed. I just wish that this could have been discussed, even if briefly, so it didn't leave me wandering, as you just have these secret phone calls that don't really go anywhere. If you were on the fence about this series after the first episode, my guess is that you were going to be hooked by the end of this one. And like I said when I reviewed the first episode, I wish these first 2 eps would have been released together, because it really builds out a compelling story. And even though we may think we have all of the answers based on these 2, there's a lot more tension and massive drama that is going to unfold. There is sex, no nudity, a lot of profanity and violence, including sexual violence. I give episode 2 of Beartown 4 out of 5 couches. So how are you liking the series so far? What did you think of this current episode? I'd love to know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for catching with me.